so you guys are going to be on my YouTube. But let me ask my question again for you. So what do refugees have to deal with when it comes to food? Why are we focusing this whole paragraph on food? What's the point we're going to try to make?
It's like how they have to change everything about their lives, and like they got to try all this new food that they probably won't like because it's so different from what they eat.
Perfect. That was actually, that was excellent. I think you covered everything we really need to think about here. Is they have to already go through so many things. One of them being trying new foods that they don't necessarily want or like. So we want the argument for this paragraph to be focused basically on what Jaden just said. However, we're going to make it more specific now to Ha's journey. So I'm going to write the first part of this down, and then you guys can help me add to it. So this is where it says argument up at the top. Throughout Ha's journey, and then I think this was similar to what you said, Jaden, as she faces or encounters journey as a refugee. Encounters. So throughout Ha's journey as a refugee, and then I'm going to use this word, and this is not a word I expect anyone to be familiar with, but I'm going to show you how I try to kind of glam up the language I'm using. So I'm not just going to say she faces a challenge, right? I'm going to try to at least put in a little effort to changing my word choice around, and I'm going to use this word conundrum. Maybe you've heard it before. She faces a conundrum of culture. So what I mean by that is this, it's a difficult problem connected to culture. So a conundrum is something that's confusing or something that's considered a difficult problem. So it's not like she's experienced this grand new culture that she's really happy about, right? This is kind of forced on her, and it's more so a confusing and difficult experience, which is what we want to make clear. So as she begins, or we can say including, having to adapt to what? What is this focused on?
Well, it has to do with food, right? American food and some American ways, I guess you could say, that aren't.
Exactly. So she has to encounter a conundrum of culture, including having to adapt to entirely new what?
American. Well, we've used the word customs before, so.
Yeah, and we just want to, you're right, we used the word customs when we talked about, I think in your challenge, or what this is going to be focused, or like what we're going to, food is focused with. And food is a part of culture, but in this case, we want to be even specific just to food. So I'm just thinking we could say having to adapt to entirely new foods. Easy as that, because we want our readers to know that this paragraph is going to be us arguing or making this statement that refugees, yes, they're dealing with a new culture, but the main part of that is having to adapt to new foods. This paragraph is going to be all about the new food. So this is our argument for this paragraph. That way you guys now know, or I know as your reader, or whoever's reading it knows, okay, paragraph 1, they're going to be arguing that Ha has to, or refugees have to, give up the foods that they're used to and adapt to new ones. So take a minute, copy that down. Josiah, Kaif, I know you guys came in a few minutes late, but this is all on that ANES-C graphic organizer. It's all under the Inside Out essay assignment, and you just have to copy it down right now. So if you could please open that up if you haven't had the chance. So I just wanted to make that clear because I know things, it was hard on Friday in terms of trying to get through and jump from document to document. This is the first time I'm having to do it online too, the essay. So I'm trying to make it a little bit easier today in terms of the process we're going to go through, because I know some of you are used to this type of organizer and others of you aren't, which is okay. So now we have our setup for this paragraph, and we actually did some of the other heavier lifting on Friday where you guys found quotes and we shared them and put them on our organizer. We aren't going to necessarily use all of them. We're going to now think about what are the best quotes that support this argument, right? What are the best ones to show that she has to give up the food that she's used to and try new ones? So I'm going to start us off because I think someone actually put this one in there, or maybe I suggested it. Whoever had this one. It's the one at the bottom, and if you don't have it, we'll copy it in. I like a soft yolk to dip bread in. So before we get into her having to have the new food and deal with the new culture, we first have to kind of explain what she's used to and why the new culture is such a shock to her. So this quote came back from the beginning of the book when we learned what types of food Ha and her family are used to eating. So make sure this one is on your document or on your organizer in the third column. Doesn't necessarily matter where on the organizer it comes in terms of what box, but it should be the third one in. So the first thing we need to do with this quote, because this is definitely one we're going to use in the first paragraph, is we want to think about going from left to right now. Is there any literary device used in this quote that we could name or really look closely at? So a literary device mean a simile, a metaphor, symbolism, personification. Is there anything like that in this quote?
Are you highlighting that on purpose?
Just so you guys know what quote I'm looking at.
Yeah, well, there's descriptive sort of thing going on here.
But do you think there's a literary device?
I mean, there's no personification. Well, I don't know. There's no personification or like.
What do other people think? Literary device or no? I agree. There's detail.
There's no metaphors, so.
Yeah, it's a pretty short quote anyway, so I'm not seeing a comparison. I'm not seeing any sort of symbol. So I would say, unless anyone wants to argue otherwise, that there's no name it here. There's no literary device that we could name. And it says right up at the top, again, it's okay. If there's nothing there, there's nothing there. So I'm going to leave that first column blank. We're not going to be talking about a literary device. Now I'm going to look at the next column. And this is how it will fall in order when we actually put it in a paragraph of what we'd be doing, and that will become a little more clear tomorrow when we write out the actual document. But we want to give some background information on our quote, right? The big thing I see with writing sometimes in here and even on the Padlet is you guys just want to drop a quote right in there and then move on, or give a little information about it and then move on to your next quote. But first, we have to help our readers understand what's even going on in the first place, especially if they haven't read the book. So we don't need a massive summary, but what could readers know about this quote? I like a soft yolk to dip bread in. Where is Ha and what is she talking about here? Is this in Vietnam or Alabama?
Which part?
Her eating the egg, the quote.
I think it was in Vietnam.
Yeah, good. It is. It's at the beginning of our book when she's still at home. So I would say I'd give the background information about, at home in Vietnam. Ha enjoyed, or Ha relied on, and I'm going to help you guys out with this to save a little time. This egg was not coming from, a carton of eggs most of us are probably getting at the grocery store. Ha's family relied on their own hen from the backyard, their own chicken, to have an egg every other day so that they could have it for breakfast. So at home in Vietnam, Ha relied on a chicken to produce egg for her breakfast. Right, that's all we really need. We don't need to know about the war. We don't need to know about fleeing right now. We just need a little background on this quote. That being that it's pretty important to know it's just coming basically right from her backyard. This is not a grocery store purchase, nothing crazy. It's an egg from the hen in her backyard.
Where do I put that?
So this is all going under that second. So the second column, the background information. So do you see how I'm in the second column down here? So we put the quote, we're in one row right now. We didn't have the first box to fill in. We started originally with this quote, a soft yolk to dip bread in, which we copied down on Friday, or if you didn't, you can put it in right now. And then I put right before it the background on the quote. So I'm just going across in a row. So every row is going to be about its own quote. I'm just choosing to start with one we put at the end because it's the first one that appears in the book. So you'll see on my screen, I put the background information in the box right before the quote. Does that make sense? Yes. No. It's okay if it doesn't. I know it's new to some of us.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okie dokie. And the quote should be what's in the third box. And if you look up, again, I know it's tricky because I started at the end of the organizer since someone put this quote in at the end. But if you look up at the top of the organizer, it labels out what should be going in each column. So the name it, explain it, the zoom in, the zoom out. And it tells you a little bit about each section if you're feeling confused. So the next thing we want to do, and if you did this last year with Mr. Palazzi, it probably will come a little bit easier, but we've also been doing it out loud and on our note takers, maybe without you noticing or really realizing it, is doing a zoom in and sometimes a zoom out. So up at the top where it tells you the information, this is where I'm just going to look for a minute. What is a zoom in? What are we zooming in and looking closely at? So if I tell you to zoom in on the quote, what would I be asking you to look at or focus on? Jalen, what am I asking you to focus on when you do a zoom in? Focus on what? We did them on our note takers, our most recent note takers.
Well, it kind of says it right there. It kind of says to focus on specific words.
Perfect. Use those resources. Perfect. So focus on specific words, the diction. So imagine you have like even a camera. If I ask you to zoom in, you're getting closer to something. So in a quote, you're getting closer to looking at certain words. Whereas a zoom out is you're zooming out of the image or out of the quote and you're looking at the bigger picture, which would be how does that quote really support your main argument and your claim for that paragraph. You don't always have to do or oftentimes have to do both. It's okay to kind of pick one or the other or switch on and off. Especially if you have a quote that has a really important word in it, do a zoom in. You don't have to do a zoom out for that one. So you can choose which one you want to do depending on the quote that you have. And you guys are good at zoom in. Like I said, we've been doing those before. And it's probably what I would do for this quote because we have a few important words here that are going to support our idea that you know, Ha's having to change what she's used to eating. Actually, I think we have the wrong word here. The quote is I love, not I like. Just change that. I think we have accidentally got the wrong word. So it should say I love a soft yolk to dip bread in. Now that I've been reading it all day. And that's the word I would zoom in on to start, right? We have this word love. So if it said I like, just change to I love. So that's telling us that Ha really enjoys her, I'm going to say, simple breakfast. Right? This is not a breakfast that I personally don't think that this would be something like, wow, this is the best breakfast I ever had. Right? She's eating the yolk of an egg, the little yellow part, with just a little bit of bread. I mean, it sounds good, but I don't think it'd be something I'd be like, wow, this is something I'd love to have. But to her, this is simple and enjoyable. So Ha really enjoys her simple breakfast. Her simple breakfast. And we also could look at the words yolk and bread, right? Again, not bacon and pancakes and French toast and scrambled eggs and, you know, breakfast sandwiches or even cereal and stuff like that. This is yolk and bread. And those two words talk about or demonstrate the simplicity of her life in Vietnam, right? This is what she's used to having, and this is what she loves to have. So demonstrates the simplicity of her life in Vietnam. Not having an elaborate breakfast, but it is something she loves, or change the word, that she indulges in. I'm also going to add enjoys her simple and fresh breakfast, because I know we've talked about before in Vietnam how the foods they're eating, such as an egg from the chicken in the backyard, that's a very fresh food. It's going right from the backyard into her kitchen. There's no grocery stores or packaging or any other sort of, like, you know, developments to get the food to be the way it is. It's a very natural and simple way of eating. So I'm going to pause for like 2 minutes here and just give people a chance to make sure they have what I have copied down without me talking. So if you need me to zoom in or move over, we don't have the first or last column filled in. It's just the 3 in the middle. I'll take another minute. Again, I just want to give you guys a time to copy it down. So if you're done, you can just hold on for a minute and then we'll move on to the next one. Anyone have any questions about this one, about the one we just did? Concerns, confusions? I know I go quickly sometimes, so please let me know if you're just confused. Anybody need another minute copying this down? I really hope we're getting it done. Save yourself a lot of stress and time. Okay. We're going to do one more on the organizer to prepare us to just start writing the actual body paragraph, which we should be able to start a little bit once we get this one done, and then we'll finish it up tomorrow. So let's move up to a quote where now we see food has changed for Ha. So we started with what it was like in her culture, and now we want to make sure we're sticking with our argument that food has changed, that she's had to try another culture's food and adapt to it. So which one of these quotes, because these were ones people shared on Friday and they're all good quotes, but which one of these shows that she's having to adapt to a new food in America? Which one of these could we work
Dried
with?
papaya.
Good, yeah, the dried papaya one, right? Because what's the difference between this one and her old papaya or her normal papaya?
Well, her papaya was fresh from a tree. The ones she gets in America are not fresh. They're like, not canned, but they're packaged and.
Yeah, they're packaged and they're like candy. Like that's why they're being described here as like sugary and stuff. I'll pull up a picture, but you're exactly right. Not fresh from the tree. So let's start again. If you haven't copied this down, it's going in that third column for another row. So this is the quote. And I'm going to kind of sum up a little bit about what Josue and I were just talking about is, you know, Ha has dried papaya for the first time while living in America and is disgusted by the complete difference, right? And we might end up rewording a few things around when we go to write. Maybe you don't, maybe you have your own way you want to say it. So if you have your own ideas, you don't necessarily have to copy down what I'm doing, but hopefully you're on the same wavelength. But I don't mind if you want to put it into your own words. But again, we don't need pages or sentences of summary. We just need a little detail to introduce what the quote is saying or what's happening in the quote. So it also says, make sure it's not a restatement of the quote. I wouldn't want to say Ha tries dried papaya, which is chewy, sugary, and waxy for the first time. And right, we want to talk about what's going to be going on, but we don't want to just restate or rephrase the quote. So that's our background information. That's our explain it. So explain it is background information and quote. Do we have a name it here? Is there any literary device used in this quote?
Besides describing how, the papaya is really it,
Yeah. And description is more of a technique, it's a narrative technique that authors use. So you're right, we have description. A literary device is more of a tool or a device being used to add to the description. So I would agree that nope, other than just the technique the author is using, there's no actual literary device. So we don't have a name it here. And that's okay. So that one's going to stay blank. And then what do we think for this one? A zoom in or a zoom out? Truly doesn't necessarily matter to me, but think about what the quote is giving to you and what one might potentially be best, but you really could go either way. What do you guys think? Zoom in or zoom out? Ileana, what do you think? Zoom in or zoom out for this quote? Should we look at the word choice or try and connect it back to our argument?
Wait, what was the question, Miss?
Do you think for this quote here about the dried papaya, we should do a zoom in or a zoom out?
Zoom out?
I mean, it works. We could do a zoom out, especially because we haven't done one yet. We might also want to do a zoom in just because it gives us these specific words to describe the papaya that I just said 20 times. So let's do, actually, we could do a little bit of both in this case. So I might start by talking about the word sugary. Spell it right. So sugary describes the difference between the fresh papaya Ha is used to from her tree as opposed to the candy-like version she is forced to have in America. So we could pick one word to zoom in on just because it does give us quite a few words that we could really break down. And you could keep going that route, but I do think you're right, Eliana. We could add in a zoom out here, especially because we haven't done one yet. So it might be good to just think about and do a little bit of both. You don't have to do both, but sometimes it's helpful. And that's the fun thing, or at least I think the fun thing about writing is you don't have to follow a formula, right? There is kind of an outline for you here with the A, N, S, C, but you can still pick and choose the route you want to go in and how you want to kind of lay it all out there. So the zoom out is when we're really going to think about how this quote supports our argument, both our main one and our claim. So our main one is that refugees in general deal with a lot of challenges. And in this paragraph, specifically the challenge of having to adapt to new food. So I might be very general in this case because now I'm connecting it to my argument. So I like this word forced here. I did use it already, so I might want to switch up using it again. Or required, I like that. Obliged, compelled. Let's say obliged. Another word for kind of forced into something because they don't necessarily have the option. She has the option not to eat it, but this is the food that they're being kind of presented with. Actually, I'm going to say obligated. Refugees are obligated to conform to the new culture and try the new foods they are presented with. In Ha's case, he misses and would prefer the natural and fresh papaya from her tree. But has to settle for the disappointing alternative. Right, and we talked about they do have papaya in America. Like I could go and buy it at the store. I honestly think I could buy it right now, but because it's Christmas time when this was happening, I think they were trying to maybe hint that it wasn't a possibility to get it, or maybe even Americans think that it'd be better to have the candy-like version, and that's why they gave it to her. But it's clearly not what she has any interest in. Just like most refugees would prefer their food and their, culture as opposed to the one they're being presented with or the one they're kind of having to conform to. So I'm trying to make it more general about refugees when I zoom out, not just about Ha, I'm still using this HA example to help me connect back to my bigger picture and my zoomed out picture that refugees are forced to do this stuff. This is the life they are being, challenged with and having to, adapt to. So zoom out is the bigger picture. And again, I'll pause there for like 2 minutes just to let people have the chance to catch up. That is the last thing we're going to add on the organizer for now. So if you are done with it, keep it up, but you can start going to open up a blank Word document. So then the next thing we're going to do is open up a blank Word document, but I'll give people, like I said, 2 minutes here to just get situated and copy things down. So technically we only have 2 full quote boxes filled in or 2 organizer columns filled in, that's okay. And if you have other quotes, that's of course okay, because we're still going to pull from them. But I just wanted to make sure you guys have a clear picture and a clear example of how to fill one of these organizers in, because you're going to have the option for the other 2 paragraphs if you would like to use an organizer because it's helpful and I do suggest it, you can, and you'll have an example, or you'll have the example of the paragraph and you can just get right into it. So if you didn't get it down, I'm going to give another minute, but like I said, take a picture too if you don't think that's enough time. That way you can copy it down or refer back to it as well. Does anybody need another minute with this? It's okay if you do. Or take a picture of it, please, if you are have not been following along. Anyone, another minute? Okay. So what we're going to do now, and let me stop recording here.